Look, I really enjoyed today's movie, and truly the only complaint I have is the title. It should be called Deaths on the Nile, plural. I know it's a spoiler alert, but come on. Murder mystery enthusiasts, back me up. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week, I plan to bring you in-depth insight into the creative process of storytelling. And folks, you know what? I'll accept it with that old title that a good old Agatha Christie came up with. If it's good enough for her, it's good enough for me. But I am really pleased to have with me today screenwriter Michael Green. And I was quite a fan of the first Agatha Christie adaptation that he did for Murder on the Orient Express, which I highly recommend you see if you haven't seen. And Death on the Nile is really a blast as well. And there's a lot of heavy lifting that Michael did for his adaptation that, is so seamless that it's fun to talk about because I'm sure a lot of it goes unnoticed. And of course, Michael was very forthcoming about his creative process. So I know you'll dig this episode. And speaking of things to dig, I hope you also check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. We published our winter issue recently, and wow, there is so much great stuff in it. We keep adding to it. We're now working on our Oscar issue. And folks, now is the perfect time to subscribe if you want to support independent journalism, and I hope that you do. You could read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. If you've never read us before, I hope you check out our free issue, which is a full free issue. There's scripts to read, tons of great interviews, and that should be enough for you to see that it's great to be a subscriber. And if you want to subscribe, I'm here to give you discount coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5, and that will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory Magazine. Look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners in iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page support my passion project. So thanks for considering. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right into our chat with writer Michael Green about his latest film, Death on the Nile. Michael, good to see you. How's it going, man?
It's going all right, all things considered, yeah.
It's been a hot minute. We last interviewed for Blade Runner 2049, which was the cover of Backstory Magazine, and I love the film, and it was a blast interviewing you. And I've loved
you're always very kind. That's why I broke my no podcast rule to come chat with you.
Well, I hope I open it up for other podcasters because I want this to be a good podcast. But like all podcasts, we're going to start with kind of breaking in stories and like who you are and from whence dost thou hail. Where did you go to school? Did you study writing?
You mean like in the college university?
Yeah.
I started university for our British and Canadian friends. I did not. I went to Stanford University, which seems like a terrible fact to start with because I hate when people drop their colleges. But
it's okay.
And I was a religious studies, human biology double major. My sister likes to say that I majored in dinner table conversation. He's like, just enough about things people are this interested in, so you can like skate by. And she is not wrong. But I knew I wanted to write, and so I was spending all my extracurricular time writing for the newspaper, tried journalism, playwriting, comedy columns. Just anything that counted as fun writing. I was trying to figure out what that was. The obligatory short story classes, really thought I was going to make a career in theater. And then one of my first internships for the Jewish Repertory Theater in Manhattan, I had a wonderful managing director who just like gave me lots of scripts, and in exchange for like just reading for him, doing his homework for him a little bit.
Right.
He would answer any questions I had about theater. And I realized pretty quickly that all of my heroes in the theater, like no one was making their living in theater. They were all writing film and television on the side.
Right.
It's sort of like, you grow up reading Kurt Vonnegut short stories, and he talks about how he got to quit advertising to go write short stories full time. And you're like, oh, but that field doesn't exist anymore. In the meantime, I just, realized, but wait, I love film and television. I spent all my time watching film and television. That's what I actually like. Why don't I try that? And at which point some luck and circumstance took over. I no longer even answer the question of like, how'd you break in? Because it was so long ago that like the facts of it just are useless to anyone.
I can trace a little of it from what I know about you, but serious question though. And not trying to get too personal, but it's a interesting kind of challenge for writers sometimes. What did your folks think when studying what you studied at Stanford, you're suddenly gravitating away from what you studied and choosing a path of writing, because a lot of writers, when they break course from what the parents expect of them, it's a little bit of a shock to the social system.
You know what? I as a writer, having great parents can sometimes be, you want some opposition. I'm blessed with a wonderful family.
That's great.
They're you couldn't ask for better, more supportive. And when I kind of made my, here comes the disappointment, I think I want to be a writer, they're like, great, let us know how to help. I mean, my dad is very funny about it. He's a very funny man. I grew up in New York, suburban New York, and he's like, look, if you wanted to go into finance, law, like there are a lot of careers I could help you with. This one, you kind of, you're on your own, but let me know. We're here for you. So, it is, if you were looking for the oppositional force of like, I'm going to show you, none of that. In fact, they were so, I had to find my own ways to oppositional forces because they were just very
That's
happy.
Great.
Yeah, no, couldn't have been. I mean, it's all very boring there. It was a bit more, tell me what that means. And I'm like, I don't know either. I'm going to find out.
Well, like from tracing like your breaking in story, your first produced credit was for Sex and the City.
That's right. So thing happened, a thing that I got. I mean, Sex and the City was the first meeting my new agents sent me to like go on. So, I don't know. I'm bored of telling the story myself, so I won't.
Well, how about this? Did you have a spec? Did you have a spec at that point?
I took a play that I'd written in college and turned it into a movie. I'd written enough, read enough features. I got a job in development at HBO, and I got downsized 3 months into the job. But I'm like, let me just read as much as I can, and so I just tried to apply that into writing something that at least like I could put all my jokes into, everything I got. Like I took every note card I had and jammed it into one thing. And I don't know, if that counts as a voice, but it sure was what I had at the time. And I was lucky enough, Darren Star read it, and it was on, it was about dating and romance in Manhattan. And he was looking for a young kid writer to like, be a dope. And that was me. And I met him and he was lovely. And, I didn't have much experience to talk about. So I told him about writing columns in college about dating, my failed experiences dating. And he's like, oh, I'd love to read those. And I literally went down to Kinko's and photocopied them and left them with his doorman. Moments you don't forget in your career. Darren Star calling me. I'm at my parents' house just before Christmas 1990 blurg. And he says, yeah, I'd love to have you come down and play. And it was, it was the greatest thing. And I just got to baby duck behind him and Michael Patrick King for season 1 of that show and learned how they approach comedy and storytelling.
That's an awesome experience. And
I'm the luckiest person you'll ever meet.
Well, you went on to genre writing too, as people know. I mean, because you had Smallville, you had Heroes, for TV. What's something that really struck you about TV writing that kind of has stayed with you and informed your feature work?
Well, TV writing is so much fun because it's applied English. It's like you take an applied English degree because something is getting shot. If you're on staff of a show, even if it's a show that gets canceled midway through the first season, which happened to me more than one time, that's 13 episodes that are getting made. So when you're writing something like something's getting shot, and it could be the scenes you write, you get over very quickly the idea of this sort of false screenwriter notion of the closet genius, where you like, I'll go into a closet and I'll emerge like Franz Liszt. I'll come out and I'll be the greatest pianist of all time and I'll show them. No, you're forced into conversation. You're forced into collaboration, and you're grateful for it because there's so much work to do that you're not, that anyone who's trying to hoard the work, you'll die. And obviously, television writing has changed with streaming services, short orders, and things like that. So the experiences have changed. But I recommend anyone make sure you spend a season or two on a 22 episode show, and then run with your life. But while you still can, but you can learn so much because you just make so much material, and you see what works and what doesn't, and you get to write for production, and you get to rewrite in the editing room, and you get to see what really, really works. So your scenes become real scenes. And one of the first things you learn is like you're looking at a board and you're like, well, these scenes can collapse into one, and this isn't a technically correct scene, but I love the character work in it, so let's merge it with this so it has the forward momentum. Otherwise, it'll die in the editing room, and you'll get a call from the physical production guys going, why'd you shoot a scene you didn't need? And your commodities are laid out for you so clearly. And it absolutely helps in feature work, because when you're in production and you can sit there with all the people who have to make really tough decisions about how to prioritize things, and you know the questions asked, like, okay, how many days do we have? And then let's go from there, as opposed to what you think is important, because your selection pressures become very clear.
Well, it's almost like it harkens back to what people consider to be lost with the studio system collapse for writers, in which television gives you so much practical experience.
Yeah.
A feature is one feature. A TV, it's a whole season. So
TV is at the discretion of the director. Now, I've worked with wonderful directors who are very inclusive. I think we'll talk about Death on the Nile, where I couldn't have had a more fun and inclusive experience.
Absolutely.
With Ken Peronar, who's like, if you have a chance, work with him. But not all features are like that. You can write a feature and not see it until it's in the premiere, and that's a fair experience and not uncommon. TV, the writers, we've all heard this. You're there now. Again, that's changed in streaming, and that's a whole other podcast about how people have to fight for production experience now. I wouldn't be the writer I am if I hadn't spent all that time. Also, I love television. I love the storytelling mechanism. I love the long, not long form means a different thing, but I love that it's storytelling built over time, that it's chapters of a novel that you're telling over time and with a plan, and that plan can pivot and move and surprise, and you can have episodes that are right on the nose of what you're doing, and then you can give them a what the fuck episode that they didn't know they needed. You have more time to violate expectation, and you can have scenes that are technically imperfect or incorrect because you just want to, because you have the space and
you have the time.
That's different in a 6-episode season, but you get to fail a little bit in larger television seasons, and certainly have.
Well, we are going to get to Death of the Nile, but I've got to ask a few more questions first. Just I like hearing lessons, if you can encapsulate it. And I know each of these questions I'm going to ask you could be their own podcast, but if you are encapsulating them into a lesson, what would it be? Logan, you were one of the writers on Logan. It got awards season kudos, which was great because genre films don't usually get that. What was your biggest lesson on Logan?
It's funny. I try to, when I pick what to do next, I always think, like, how's this going to be different? What am I going to learn that's different? And in that one, it was working specifically with Jim Mangold, whose work I mean, he's an incredible director.
He's just awesome.
He's amazing. He's an educator. He's a professor who learned from excellent professors. And he spans genres, which is something I like to do, and which is something he's done excellently. I mean, he's got like a Billy Wilder list of credits of just things he's jumped in and out of so successfully. And I also knew from having heard about him and heard him speak, that his process for writing and crafting story is very different from mine. Left to our own devices, we just have a very different way of attacking story. His is iterative and improvisational, very jazzy, and mine's more it's studied, methodical. And I'm like, great, let me throw myself into whatever it is that, so that every day wake up ready to throw away what we did and try it again and see where it lands us and come back to it. And, we'd be like searching, going, wait, where's that scene we wrote 3 weeks ago? Is that still applicable here? Or just to see what it would be like to throw myself into someone else's process. And sometimes that's wonderful. And it's one of the reasons I do love collaborating and have done it many times, is sometimes it's you take two processes and meet in the middle, but I knew he was so seasoned that it would be, I have to just join with him and see if I can jam in that band. And it was a joy because it was jamming to music we love. We obviously had opinions about it, and he had a head full of steam on what he was after, but had a lot to go to actualize it. So I felt like I could really contribute there, and it made something that would never have come out if I'd done it, the way I do other things. So but I really do look at everything like, okay, what's going to be different about this? And I learned other lessons along the way too, but that was a real one of like, just let go your attachment, because that is one of the things you do get at. It really goes back to the television days. You can't be a hothouse flower about it. I'm sure you'll ask questions that'll make me go back to this, but I have a rant about unicorn writers. That it's just that I find it like it can be an affectation, or you can just get stuck in the I have to write a certain way, and this is how I do things, and I need to drink my tea at a certain time. Anyway, I already all that.
Wait, go on. So what you're saying is, disrupt the system. Disrupt the system. That your process is more robust than you think. You don't have to do it a certain way. In fact, probably not great for you to do it a certain way. And also, every project you have to do it a certain way. Yeah. I get asked that question all the time. Like, do you write in the mornings or the evenings? Like,
you write when you get 5 fucking minutes to put together. Like, and if you have kids and throw that in the mix, it's you write when the world allows, and especially if if you're working in television when you've got meetings all day, you can't say like
right.
You have to be really in command of your schedule or in just pure development to be able to say I write from X hour to X hour every day. It's you can try to protect that time, but you're going to write when you can, or you're just not going to write. So yeah, just learning to roll with whatever and be more robust about it, and just like learn to write standing on your head whenever you can.
You've worked for years with Ridley Scott, and you have a story by credit on Alien Covenant.
I do.
And so was there ever a full draft for Alien Covenant?
Yeah, I wrote it when it was earlier on. It was a really fun experience. I mean, obviously it's a franchise I love.
Yeah.
I'd finished Blade Runner for Ridley, which was its own kind of like, how the hell did that happen?
And we're going to talk about that in a second, of course.
And and I got a call from one of his execs saying, "Hey, good news, different news. Ridley has he really likes Blade Runner. He thinks we're done working on it for now." But he wants to do. He wants to take a look at the Prometheus script he's got. Maybe you do that next. And I was like, and for circumstantial reasons that seem silly now, can you meet tomorrow? It was like, and all right, I guess I'll do that for a bit. So I spent a couple really fun months. There was a script that existed. That was really smartly written. I believe by John Spates. If I'm incorrect, apologies to him. Excellent writer, but it was a really, really smart draft. But just the concept for what they wanted the movie to change had changed, right. And so I spent some time on it, and then I went away from that to go write Orient Express, and I think American Gods as well. And then in that time before Ridley went to direct it, they changed again from what the film wanted to be, from a more emotionally evocatively similar sequel to Prometheus to an alien movie.
Right.
And so then John Logan and I think another writer before went and did the adaptation into that. So there were concepts.
What was something that was lost? What was something that you just loved on that draft that you could tell us about? That
I don't like looking at it like that. It was more, if there was any regret at all in that, it's, I think it would have been really fun if we knew at the time when I was working on it that, what's going to be better is just like let's do the Alien movie as opposed to a Prometheus movie, which just had different values to celebrate. Sure. It was a bit, the one we were working on was a bit more philosophical. Let's, get into the hard sci-fi of it all, as opposed to an alien movie, like what it became in Covenant. I think that just would have been a fun movie to write, and I've always wanted to write one of those as well. And I enjoyed what I did, and I think it was readable, but they just changed what the value of the movie should be. So I look at what they got to and went, oh, that's like, I enjoyed it as a fan. And a lot of the core concepts I put in were still in there. So there's still something to be proud of. And Ridley Scott directed a movie I had anything to do.
Oh yeah, no, it's awesome. And I swear we're going to get to Agatha Christieville, but not yet. So Blade Runner 2049, I love it. I was proud to have it as the cover of our magazine. And, I feel like it didn't fully get its due when it came out, but I know that the fans really loved it. And it has since continued to resonate.
Well, it's nice to hear.
These days, it seems like people could barely remember that there was even dissent. And people pine for it. So what was your favorite part of that experience?
I appreciate you saying it. I don't, I say goodbye to a project at some point, some final viewing where emotionally I just let go, and then it exists and I hope people enjoy it, but I try not to find out what happened to it. It's, you want an audience to find it. You want people to enjoy what you did there. And every once in a while, someone will say, "Oh, someone wrote this really cool thing," and I might take a look at an essay and be like, "Oh, okay, I wrote it for that person." But it was a joy. I mean, I got to write a Blade Runner movie, and we shot it, and it took forever. I think it was. I looked at my calendar at one point, and my first day on set during prep, seeing the stages, was 3 years to the day that I actually pitched, the first official meeting when I was officially on, instead of the get the job meeting.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a minute on that I wasn't kicking myself like, can you believe this? And just getting to write something you love.
Was there a lesson? Was there something that during the process changed your creative habits, working that close with Ridley Scott?
Yeah. I mean, learning how someone like him works was amazing, because you realize that the higher level directors work, the more they're trusting with their writers. It's one of the strangest experiences. Like, you'd think it would be more exacting. Instead, it's Ridley decides which writer he's going to trust in this with story and character. And you're the person who gets to push back, and he wants that, but in the same way, he's absolutely exacting and looking for certain things. But then there are these wonderful moments that other writers have described as well, where you're pitching him something and he kind of seems like he tunes out, but no, and then he starts sketching, and it's like, oh, he just saw it. And then he pitches it back to you where it's the same emotional character story necessities that you have, but now it's flipped on its head, and it becomes this indelible world-class moment with visuals to boot that they hold up, and you try to steal them, but then they end up giving them to the production designer. Arthur Max gets it, and the next day you get an email with what your scene's going to look like. So it becomes actualized in an incredible way. On that one, it was such a big, like, I've never been told don't fuck it up more than on that one. My dad, when I told him I got the job, he's like, wow, that's a big one. Can't fuck that one up.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? Like, I'm glad that they're starting to take some of the story seeds and go in different directions. There's the animated show.
Yeah.
I wish there would be a feature sequel to it. Hopefully,
there may be over time.
I hope there is.
There's high ambition. Alcon Studio, who's in charge of it, they love it. They have big plans. But I will say, it wasn't so much a lesson. There was so much don't fuck it up that I decided to do something I hadn't been doing, which was I decided on that one to slow down. Just when I was writing the first draft, that like I just wanted to use the full allotment of time I had to, just sit with it and read, instead of, because usually you're such a breakneck speed or so many things are going on. I made sure I wasn't doing anything else for the majority of it, except I did have to take a 3-week period because I owed a pilot at some point, and then went back to it. But just to like really, a pilot that went nowhere, so why bother taking that time off, right? But
exactly.
Sometimes it's you have to give yourself the gift of tuning things out, and that's really hard to do. I was not an in-demand screenwriter at the time, so it was a lot easier to do. But you have to take time sometimes when you can, so you can hear the quieter voice. I didn't meet Hampton Fancher until much later in the process, and I have such an affection for him. But when he was describing his own process of Blade Runner, either 30-something years ago or more recently, he talks about it. His metaphor was searching for seeds in the dirt. You're in the dark, your hands are moist, and you're just like trying to feel things. And if you don't give your senses some space, you might miss one and think it's a rock.
He's wild. I love Hampton Fancher. When we did that issue for Backstory, I interviewed you, but I also interviewed him. And there was, we have buttons. We're a digital magazine. So we could make a button and we could have additional text outside of the article, a screenplay, an excerpt, whatever. And so I'm interviewing Hampton, and, it's like, we have a usual allotment of time, like 40 minutes or something like that. But he's like, look, we're going to go over. I'm like, okay. And I could hear him pacing around his room.
Yeah.
And he would just stop and he would come across these stacks of paper. There's no other way to describe it. And he's like, oh, let me read you this. And he would just start reading me like Blade Runner 2049 prose ideas that he had, like stuff that never made it into anywhere. And he would go off on like, honestly, a 3 or 4 minute rant. And like, I had to have that all transcribed and then try and figure out as a button in a side piece of the article to just let people hear like Hampton's like stream of consciousness.
He is a curio. There's a reason there's a documentary about him.
Yes.
Right. No, he's
an idea generator. He's a force of nature.
He is. He's one of the more interesting people I've ever gotten to know, and I adore him. Just getting to sit and you ask him the right questions, you'll get those stories, and your job when you're hearing them, if anyone out there ever gets to chat with Hampton Fancher, is to keep them going, because you marvel at what life can bring people willing to dance into it.
That's a great way to say it.
His life is so much different from mine, because he went and lived it and moved across the world and changed his name and became a dancer and an actor, and just dove in, never checking the pool water first. And I'm the one who, like, if I'm getting in the pool, it's going to be toe first, then my ankles, then I check the temperature again, then I reapply sunscreen. A life beautifully lived, sometimes harrowingly lived. Keep him talking long enough.
Yeah, I mean,
you get the near misses with him. It's amazing.
He's awesome. Well, all right. I want to get into Agatha Christie. Before we get to Death of a Nile, we got to certainly start with Murder on the Orient Express. When it was announced, I was actually pretty excited because I was a fan of the 70s films. I'm a fan of Agatha Christie's writings. And I was curious what modern audiences were going to think. And would they have the patience? And I was quite relieved when I saw your movie because you straddled a very difficult line that I want to talk about for a second, in which how do you have a sense of mystery without too slow of a pace, but knowing when to slow down, but also kind of speeding things up for modern audiences too. And so Branagh did just a wonderful job of really moving his camera around and making it as visually interesting as it could be. Some people whined about it. I actually thought it helped bring it to a new generation, and every single camera movement was in service of story or character. So it wasn't just flashy for flashy's sake. It was telling the story.
All of that. I mean, look, it became real when Ken came on, as director and as star, because then we knew we would have all that. Yeah, everything you say.
What was it like for you on the page, though, to really be able to straddle that line? And not as if Christie needs livening up for modern audiences.
Well, to a degree, she does. I mean, you livening up is probably the wrong word. You have to help the modern audience take it seriously, or at least emotionally ground it, so it isn't. I didn't want to do a silly version. I didn't want to do a farce. Although someone could certainly make a great. There have been wonderful farce versions.
Murder by Death, of course.
Yeah, I mean, the material's so robust it can stand. Almost any version of it. And still be, considered like, oh, you recognize the core of it. You have to know going into something like that people are going to complain no matter what you do.
Yes.
There are people who love it so much that they'll only love their version, like anything, whether it's, Smallville, well, that's not my Superman, or, a Bible story, like people who love things with all their heart, they remember their version of it. And all you're going to do is decide what's your version of it. I always say, you're not there to do the high school play. You're not there, you want something that resonates and is absolutely true to the source material, but you find what you love about it and then bring that. So, I mean, it wasn't a great outcome, but like when I was working with Greg Berlanti and Mark Guggenheim on Green Lantern, my first feature, it was like, okay, what do we love about Green Lantern? And let's try to make other people love that. And whether it's there or not, I can't say, but at least we knew what our North Star was. And same thing with that. I want to think like, what are the values of this? And the other thing you have to know is, to a degree, you are doing a cover. Like, I'll give an analogy I've never given before. Let me see if I can work it out. I was in the car last week, and what was it? It was Weezer's Africa. Like, they're doing a cover of the great Toto song, and it's not a great cover. Forget whether you like Weezer or not. It's like, it's just too. It kind of sounds like the Toto version, just a little sped up,
right?
With just like, and with their like sound, but it's and you compare that to like the Bangles' Hazy Shade of Winter, which like takes a great song by a great, by Simon and Garfunkel, and actually arguably made it a better song, or at least one like that. I would skip that song on the Simon and Garfunkel album, but it was one of my favorite songs when the Bangles did it. So so what did they do? They added to it. They brought something to it, but it's still very much the same song. So, and you also have to know, like with Agatha Christie, I'm not going to be the last person to adapt Murder on the Orient Express.
Absolutely.
I hope I'm alive to see 3-4 versions, but every, whatever, 10, 30, 50 years, whatever it is, this is stuff that's going to always come back. There's always going to be another Batman. There's always going to be another Bond, and there's always going to be another Poirot. And I think there's always going to be another Benoit Blanc. That's how much I like that movie.
Yes.
He's not the last person. Daniel Craig's not the last person to play that great character.
That's true. That's true.
Which is a huge testimony to like what a character.
I like your version of saying it's a cover, because I mean, there could be great covers and you have to invigorate, and that's a part of adaptation. And that's a difficult part of adaptation, is knowing when to stay reverent, but also knowing when to adapt and do something new.
You have to bring something new to it. Otherwise there is what's the point of doing this? If you just, if it's the same experience as the, the 78 film or then it didn't need to be. So, then you just, what maybe that's just a long way of saying you're giving yourself license to use your instincts.
Yeah.
You can't service every fan instinct. I mean, if a fan pitches it, it's something I can't do.
What was something new on Murder that you were really proud of that took a little while to crack?
It's funny. I said goodbye to that movie a while ago. You know, for me, again, in the what's the new news for it, I'd never written a murder mystery. I've written now 3 procedurals, really. I mean, Blade Runner, Murder on the Orient Express, and Death on the Nile. So, and I have in television, there's so much procedural, and I've just not really done it. I've never written cops and detectives, really. And I know people who do it so well at such high volume. It's masterful, and that some of them love it, and some of them are just great at it. And like it's a chip I just don't really possess. Or my chip is like a little tiny, 8 horsepower engine, and but when you get to know people who can crank out 22 episodes a year of a real mystery with a real conclusion, and I'm lucky if I find one. So being able to use Agatha Christie's engines is a real gift. And every once in a while I'm lucky enough to devise my own like surprise twist ending on something, and it becomes and I can put that into a movie. So I needed to learn on the job how to deliver a rewarding mystery where you have to put down the red herrings, where you have to fight exposition, because the probably the hardest thing about an Agatha Christie book is like each book will have like 2,000 data points to tell that story. And in a novel, you can really just write in a sentence that covers it. Give each character where they were at the time. You can just put in a sentence, and it's just, it blows by fast. Whereas if you're going to put it in a dialogue, you really have to whittle it down to like, you might get like 120 data points. And then and then 30 of them are going to fall out in the editing room. So maybe the lesson I learned in Murder on the Orient Express is like, I can name that tune in how many notes. One of the best experiences I had on that was, I agree with you on complimenting Ken on his pacing, because I got to see cuts of it, and we would talk stuff out, and I was amazed and relieved at things that came out that I thought that I was sure were necessary, and then found, what, this movie isn't interested.
Do you want to give us an example?
Yeah, sure. When I realized it was clues and clocks, that in the shooting draft of Murder on the Orient Express had quite a bit of where was everyone at exactly this time? And because that's so much a part of Agatha Christie's storytelling, and especially that one, because it was a really tightly wound clock of who was where when and who could have done it. She spends a lot of time on the possibility of who could have done it. And in addition, a lot of other clues left behind. And the film was just less interested in it because it was very intellectual. And what really resonated more was you have these amazing actors playing these roles, and they all brought so much more to it than you could have ever had on paper. So the why, the potential why, the actual why, and the tete-a-tete of the 2 brilliant characters, Prey and Glory, Hunted, Prey and Glory, going head to head against each other, that was the interesting thing. That was the value of the movie. So one of the greatest, just fun experiences I had was writing the next one, knowing, I know I don't have to exhaust it, because that was the hardest part of writing Orient Express. The thing that was the hardest was the thing that came out first, when the movie was leavened for it. So I didn't have to kill myself with the clock with some of those detailing that is so essential to the novel.
And we'll talk about exposition a little more when we're in the spoiler section too.
Hardest part of screenwriting.
Yeah, and especially in this case though, because as you said, there's a reason why Christie needed to give you so much exposition, and exposition in her case is often misdirection. Yes. So which is beautiful, by the way, and that's why people love reading.
And she also can just jam it in a way that you won't notice, like you don't mind. And but in a film, exposition can destroy you.
Now, I can't remember if it was a part of Murder or not, but I know that good old Hercule had a Watson character to an extent.
She's a couple in some of the books,
but they're gone. They're gone from these movies. Were they ever part of the books?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
so was that like an early decision to just get rid of?
Is the character who's in Nile, and he's a non-suspect Watson. Yeah. And it was one of I wouldn't say it was a rule I made for myself, but I just wasn't interested in any character who wasn't a suspect.
Right.
They fell out. You needed, even if they were a less likely suspect, you needed a potential motive for everyone, or some possibility of it. Otherwise, who's going to want to play that character?
Right. And Book was kind of his character in Murder. And it was really not used as a Watson so much as an occasional sounding board.
Sounding board. He is in the novel. He figures very heavily, right? And he's less of a suspect, but he creates the conditions under which the film occurs in some ways.
Yes.
So he was very useful, and he also helped in the introduction to Poirot because there was someone who knew him.
And of course, we'll talk about him in Nile in a minute. I guess, for a quick moment, since we're still in the non-spoilers, I want to talk about your creative habit for a second. How important is outlining your process? And when you're doing an adaptation, do you break down the book with like highlighters and pages and notes and then create your own new outline?
Good question. I don't have a habit that I do every time. This kind of goes into resist unicorn writing.
Sure.
I have nothing against outlines. Some projects demand them, some projects want them, and some projects it would be a waste of time and energy, or at least, so much of writing is just learning how to hack your brain to get it to do work it doesn't want to do. Right. And I've learned just from experience with my own, stupid brain, that in some cases an outline will slow down the writing later because my brain thinks, oh, didn't I already do this? Like if it's too much like a first draft, but other times you absolutely need one, or the studio demands it and you don't begrudge it. So I try to look at an outline, like think of it as a scale model. Sometimes this is very process oriented, but there are definitely some projects where you have a lot of people, all of whom are there to be respected, or you might love, but like you might have in television, it might be a studio and a network and producers, or you might have
right. And outlines in television are always more common as well.
Yeah, and sure, one of the things coming out of television is you don't begrudge it because sometimes you're prepping off an outline, or like you need to get every piece of it approved, and then you also learn a very important habit of making sure the script is not the outline, that you enhance it and it evolves, but not in a way that makes people explode, their heads explode. So
right,
of course. But just to finish that thought, sometimes you have so many important, thoughtful, smart people on a project that you need a detailed outline just to get everyone on board and say, okay, I'm going to do, this is what it's going to be. Sometimes that's a rewrite where like people have been working on, you're coming in 2 years into a development process with directors and studio and producers and an actor or 2 or 5, and everyone has opinions. And, you might be you're the new ingenue coming in and going, okay, I'm taking all this in. And it can be a very helpful thing to just write a detailed out. I've dropped 45, 50 page outlines that here's a version of the movie that I'm going to keep going on.
Wow.
But if you sign off on this, like at least it reorients everyone back in. It becomes a tuning fork. And again, people can start prepping either literally or in their minds about your intention.
And did you do that for Murder and Nile?
For Murder and Nile, one yes, one no.
Okay.
For both of them, for the Christie estate, I did do a treatment because it's something that they like in process. And I don't begrudge them all. They've been wonderful, excellent partners. They're really a team that knows the value of their property, but also knows to let it evolve.
Yeah,
that fidelity can drag it down, but at the same time, sometimes they don't want to go too off the board there. And you asked about Murder, so I'll start with that one. That provided an outline. That one was a bit more detailed, but then it was more about a board than an outline. And I had enough producers there that I could say, how does this sound? And also, I should say this now because he's a friend and very much a reason why I have a feature career. There's an executive at 20th who is now head of 20th, Steve Asbell, who is, you get the right executive and your life is better. Your career is better, your process is better, and your product is better, and you also have a friend. And in him, I have all that. He's a wonderful person and just like a true gifted story brain. And so I had someone both on the producer side, because everyone has sort of different goals, but I had someone in the studio that I could give it to, and someone I could trust to say, do I have it or not? And someone whose notes I heed very seriously because we were all talking about the same thing. Similarly, on Nile, for reasons that are completely unimportant now, especially post-COVID, I didn't have the time to outline. And it was actually part of the fun for me. I'm like, okay, I have it in my head. I wonder if it'll work out. Let me try something to keep, because I also, in the hack your brain, I find my best outlines for my process are about 70% there. I still need a little bit of tightrope walking without a net. If it's too solved, it can become stale. And in that one, I'd done a treatment, but it wasn't structural in the same way, but it was character-based. And so I had a board, but with some holes in it. And it was a little bit more instinctive of where things needed to go.
When you're talking about a board, you're talking about note cards and all that jazz, right?
I'm talking about, in that case, it was a dry erase. I've done
dry erase, okay.
Yeah. Whether I do a dry erase or note cards depends on if I'm doing any traveling. Like if I'm going, if I'm going somewhere and I need something I can actually put in. But I'll tie off in a bow the conversation about outlines. You're saying, I think the most important thing about outlining, even when you do an incredibly detailed one, is to let it go. Maybe again, this is just part of the hacking my brain's silly habits. But when it's time to go from outline to script, I try not to look back at the outline and think, if my brain doesn't remember that beat, it probably wants to fall away.
Yes, a lot of people have said that. Absolutely.
Yes, similar to the when you're adapting a book, you read it, you reread it. I don't think it's good to. I mean, look, some books are closer to screenplays, but most are not, and that's why they're books, and that's why they're wonderful. At some point, you have to write a draft, and you have to put the book down. You might go back and look for a line to honor the author, whether they are living or dead. I will always give the book a reread after I have a draft in hand that I'm happy with and everyone else happy with, to see if they put anything better than I did. And sometimes you're like, oh, that's such a cleaner version of the line. I've got this clunky thing over here. But you've got to. It's like writing historical fiction. You have to let go of your research and just write your story. You have to give yourself that permission. This is the point in the interview where I've lost sight of the question.
No. You're still on it. It's just,
I don't even remember where we started.
It's about the fidelity of the book to an interview. And I think you answered it. I mean, like you need to walk the tightrope. You don't want it to get stale. And you've already talked about unicorn writing. And obviously you don't want to do that. But
that's my grumpiest. I get my grumpiest when with people talk. I can only write with the doily of my grandmother's
right
under my coffee.
But riddle me this. Do you have any sort of a occasional habit in which you say, I'm going to spend at least X hours writing, or I'm going to hit a page count of X when you sit down to write for a day on a feature?
No, I don't think it's honest. I don't think it's honest to process. Okay. I don't think it's honest to life.
Fair enough.
I mean, certainly in COVID, and this bears mention, like we were all writing from home. So I got to go, look, I've heard writers give some great, advice, like, David Goyer gave a very honest answer at one point. He's such a hard worker and such a, puts out so much, but like, work out, get to the office by a certain time, and then make sure that the phone doesn't come to me for a certain amount of time. That's important but then you're at home with COVID and it's like the FedEx guy shows up and there goes your morning. A lot can derail you. Yeah. But that also, sometimes you're on a roll and you got to keep going. But it really is, what time do you have? Lord and Miller recently gave an interview about their wonderful after party. And which they were talking about, just like writing on set and not sleeping. And that's you write when you can, like between setups. The TV show I'm working on now was co-written when I was on the set of Nile and in the car to and from set.
Wow.
Because it was that's time to apply. And
give us a timeline. Was Nile written pre-COVID?
Nile was written and shot pre-COVID.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. It was one of the most easy, bumpless development and production experiences, just because it was all these great people who had all worked together before and really knew what we were doing. And writing it was also really fun and constructive. And then we wrapped Christmas 19, and then Ken was cutting the first cut when the world shut down and he moved to remote, and then it posted remote and pivoted that way, but it lost out on some of the
and now with vaccines and masking, it was in theaters this past weekend and it took #1. So congrats on that.
Yeah, it took #1 with an asterisk.
Yes, but it still took #1, man.
No, we'll take it.
People left their houses to see it, which is cool, and I hope they did it safely and kept their masks on.
They did it safely, and I hope more people are able to do it safely over time. It's a movie that was made for the theater. It was shot on film. It is showing in IMAX and on
and it was fun to see with the crowd. And last question before we get into the spoilers: what was the budget and schedule, if you remember?
I don't. Forgive me.
Don't worry about it. We're gonna jump right into the spoilers. We're gonna jump right into the spoilers. So
now we lose a certain percentage of the podcast audience. Do they?
No, actually, hopefully it's people that have. If you have not yet seen the film, podcast listeners in iTunes and Spotify, and YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, which is where the zooms of these interviews go. If you've not yet seen Death on the Nile, please press pause, go see it, come back, and hear the rest of the conversation. You can see it in theaters, and it will eventually obviously be on streaming too. I want to talk about something. It's always sad when spoilers get out before a movie. And I was actually defending you guys last week because it was pissing me off. People were talking about, oh my God, the mustache has a backstory. Are you freaking kidding me? And you know what? Damn it. I enjoyed walking into this movie, not knowing what to expect and seeing a flashback at the beginning And seeing this evolution of why he decided to wear a mustache as both a tribute to his commanding officer who was lost, A, which was a really cool visual concept, and B, to cover up the damage that the explosion did to his face in, with this perfect mustache. And I like that. And I want to talk about that because
I appreciate that.
I don't think people should ever be ashamed of putting a backstory in a movie if it is character driven, not fan service of something obscure.
No, it's a fair, I hadn't heard that, but that's certainly a fair thing people can say about it. I didn't read it that way.
I liked it. Tell us what inspired it.
It's the backstory for me of why is he so weird? Forget the mustache is just like, the Batmobile. That's just like, that's just an accoutrement. It's, he wears a mask. And when I say a mask, it's not the cape cowl mustache. It's his oddity. And especially if you love the Agatha Christie, classic, Fidelis, from the books version, he's a weirdo.
Yeah.
And he uses his oddity as an offensive tactic to throw people off, and as a defensive tactic to make people underestimate him. But all in, he's OCD. He is kind of monastic, and I'm talking classic Poirot, and certainly in Kent's portrayal as well. But he's weird, and he eschews life in favor of this very strange profession that, in his mind, requires all his little gray cells, and all the oxygen in his blood, and in all the minutes in his day. So it is kind of weirdly monastic. And I was just looking for why, what made him turn off the world in favor of this life and providing a service that only he can. And so the mustache is syndocal for it. It's a metaphor for it, but it's not, that wasn't what the backstory is there to tell you. And it also really came out of, in choosing to do Death on the Nile, it was going to, when you're looking okay, how can we do, put some layers on top of a wonderful book? And it's a great book. It's really not a spoiler. It's arguably her best written, I would say, that, and maybe Roger Ackroyd, just in terms of fiction writing and prose style. It's really, really lovely writing. But the themes that were in it that we wanted to enhance out were just about romance, heat, passion, love, sex. And those are all things that would be so much fun to watch Poirot go up against, because every character, every suspect, making every character suspect as well. That was another thing we did. But every character, every suspect was going to have a perspective on love, romance, and have their behavior mediated by where they are on the love, romance, passion, part of their lives. Are they over it and clearly jilted? Or are they in the throes of it? Did they just have their heart broken? All the fun things. And the person who seemed like they would be most confused, befuddled, curious, or just thrown by it was going to be Poirot, because he doesn't do that.
Right.
Poirot in the books just kind of sees young lovers and goes, l'amour, but then quickly goes and eats some dainty pastries. He can't deal. He's like a little kid who finds it yucky when his parents, their parents' kids. And that felt like a story to tell. Why is he weird in general? And why is he so very, very alone? And felt like there was a story of heartbreak to tell. Something happened. And we also know, he has some backstory from the books, from his age, age and from story, World War I and being a cop. So he's seen some stuff. And
you show his girlfriend visiting him in the hospital.
Yeah, we'd had a little photo of her from the first film. We knew that there was something. And so we have a little tale of he was wounded and had someone he loved. And that's not the story. The story is that he was going to, he had a life that he imagined for himself, lost it, and couldn't get over it. He became a shade and gave up a portion of his humanity for this, because he was capable of being the person that crime needs, but he wasn't planning to do it.
Right.
He had the deductive mind, but giving yourself wholly to it, because he wasn't going to do it because the world needed it. He did it because he had nothing left in his mind.
Well, to give perspective on his approach to these lovers and these relationships in Death on the Nile. I thought it was really good. And then you have the payoff at the end of him actually shaving his mustache.
Yeah, just letting go of the
going
mask.
To see a performance by a woman you could argue that he is interested in, or is
I would say he's
interested in
interested.
being vulnerable around.
Yeah, no, he's used to being flirted with as a tactic. You said it many times, and in the films, like flirting with me is going to have no effect. But he's flirted with a woman who actually is kind of into him.
Yeah.
And spoiler, turns out has nothing to hide. He finds out it's actually genuine, and there's and he has to contend with that. Like, is there a bit of humanity left, having seen it? And what it comes down to is we wanted him to be somewhat affected by what happens. That it's a movie, it's not television. He doesn't just bounce back at the end of a Simpsons episode to square one, and we reset and no comeuppance, right? Classic Simpsons.
Right.
So that meant we could let him learn a bit. Same way that we think the first film, the goal was, okay, Poirot versus morality. It ain't all cut and dry. It's not black and white. The world exists in grays, and sorry, you're OCD, but get over it. That makes him a better investigator. So, some conversation I had at some point, which probably means it happened on Twitter, I was defining for myself, someone was complaining about why Batman movies are always origin stories, or for me, getting the job, losing the job is the movie, doing the job is TV. The episodes where Batman just fights crime are comics. Those are episodes. But in a movie, you need epochal moments that are about, what shapes this person. Because Poirot movies are going to be about a specific case, that means we got to do that. But the biggest fear I have as a writer is sure, go ahead, give me any knock you've got on the movie, just don't call it a television episode, because then I fit. Someone can say, I don't like this, I don't like that. Oh, it's an origin story for the mustache, if that's a thing. Whatever complaint they have, just don't tell me this should have been a television episode, because that means then I fucked up. I didn't give enough of myself to it.
I thought you did, and I thought by the way that ending, especially after he's seen just all the problems with these lovers during the movie, especially between Boog and Rosalie, and how their love wasn't allowed by the mother to exist, and just all the complications. I thought that was a really good ending as well, and it was also a good way to let the book breathe into something that was filmic, and to show his afterlife, after the case is solved.
There is an effect that he doesn't just go and move on.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming, and I thought it was a really good ending moment. So, kudos. The
goal was to end on the ending there, that we had the case, but that there's still some unresolved personal thing. And if you felt he's affected by the lovers around him, and there were so many, then that's what we're aiming for.
Ooh, hey, I'm jumping in really quick to remind you to check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You could read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. And folks, we recently published our winter issue, our Dune issue. There are so many in-depth, great interviews in there. And we also are a digital magazine, so we publish cool stuff outside of our regular issue by just sliding it right in, even after we've quote unquote published, because we could do that. So there is a huge 5,000 word story about Star Wars Visions, the Japanese anime Star Wars show on Disney Plus. We managed to interview at least 4 of the directors via a translator, which was just a blast for us to do. And we also did a really big story about this year's Nichols Fellows. And you could read about their journey to becoming Nichols Fellows and even read excerpts from their scripts. So there is a lot in the current issue, and you could check out our table of contents anytime, and I hope you do. And if you've never read us before, I hope you'll check out our free issue. And if you like what you read, I hope you'll consider becoming a subscriber. And if you want to, I have a deal for you. You could use discount coupon code SAVE5 to save $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory Magazine. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page support my passion project. So thanks for considering. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right back into our interview with screenwriter Michael Green about his latest film, Death on the Nile. Well, so exposition really is tough. Tell us about some of your tricks to get through it in this movie. I mean, sometimes there were visual elements that just I wouldn't expect in a movie like this. I'm so glad you had the budget for just even, to drag the Nile and seeing underwater and seeing it. It just gives you that pause from the story. And it was a nice visual. And some of it seemed like the way that effects would have been used in old movies occasionally, by just showing, the Sphinx, and there's no real big populous city around it, and just giving you that sense of how Egypt looked at the time, aside from some of the stock footage shots or shots that felt a little more, stock footage modern of the time, even though I know it's supposed to be the 30s. But I really like those kind of effect shots that were thrown in. How many were scripted, or how many were things that were found in post?
Almost all of them were scripted, and either
they're like little breaks almost.
They're little breaks. You're looking for resets. The Christie books I enjoy the most are Sealed Room. I just love that as the construct. Filmically, a sealed room can be confining, especially in our take on these, which is you still want to go to vistas, you still want to travel, you still want the beautiful places. And whether it's a train or whether it was the boat, it plays as a sealed container so that you limit the number of people in ingress and egress. So you just look for ways to break it up. Sometimes I've been getting off the boat and going to Abu Simbel, or as you say, dragging the Nile, or just tension-wise having a cutaway to an alligator trying to bite a heron on the side of the banks of the Nile. And it starts with draft one. I probably scripted an X number of them. We moved them around, or Ken thought he might need another one here. Dragging the Nile certainly became way more dynamic under his lens than I'd imagined. Same with he popped in a couple jump scares, like the snake jump scare, which actually got me on my first theater. You just look for those things, because you don't want, there are versions of Poirot that are wonderful to see that are just a bit bloodless and cold and calculating. And this, you wanted to keep the heart rate up.
What was your toughest piece of exposition here? The one that you were really sweating to get through, and how did you make it digestible? Because that's basically part of a writer's job, is making exposition digestible.
Exposition is always the hardest part, because you've got to put it on character. My friend Hart Hansen, who did the Wonderful Bones show, always said, Expo as ammo. Find a way to just put people on two sides and have them argue with each other. That doesn't quite work with this, but it's a great concept for anyone struggling with their script right now.
Sure.
I don't think there's any particular part that was difficult. It was fun to write. I like writing. I don't like writers complain and say, this was terrible and I had a full head of hair before I started this. If you're not enjoying it, then, you might be attacking the scene wrong. And I do take that as there are harder scenes. There are scenes that, are tough.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
No, and I'll say, in these movies, one of the challenges you're going to get, because it's part of the celebrated value of the property, is the denouement, the delivery of the solution.
Yeah.
That when you say Poirot movie, and everyone knows that there's going to be a moment when we're going to have to put people in a room and tell them what happened. And every screenwriter has to approach this in their own way. The classic way is get everyone in a room, sit on some couches, cover everybody. We've looked for different ways to stage it. I remember an Orient Express, when it was Ken's idea, and it was a wonderful idea, is let's get everyone outside, put them at a long table, Last Supper style. And where's why it's great. It gets us outside. It's easier to shoot. We have a way to shoot it. I can shoot me separately, so it'll be easier to direct all these incredible there were a lot of practical reasons, but it also took it out of the dining car. But from the screenwriting perspective, that is where your data points really collect. Her denouement can be in the book. They could be 60 pages. They're never short, and they're delightful, but you can't have a 30-minute denouement. So you start collecting, what do I have to say? What do I want to say? And what are and how do you break it up? How do you keep it interesting? And again, Orient Express was probably overwritten and we took some out, but this one, having the experience of knowing what's going to land and what was not, it was I was really proud when the final cut version was pretty damn close to the draft, because it was correctly calibrated, and absolutely hinges on Ken's performance as Poirot, keeping you,
which was great.
First of all, when he wants to do the fast pass, he could, it's Hopkins level intensity of just speaking, rapidly and absolutely captivating. So that's probably the part that creates the most challenges, because you owe so much for the movie to work, and it all has to be there. And that's where your math needs to check out. And it's paying off everything you've set up.
Right.
So that the people who said, well, it was slow here because something wasn't happening, it's also, you can have that, which again, every movie that's ever been made of these, in this genre, always complains about a slower first half before things really kicked off. Can we get to the murder faster?
Right.
And the answer is not if you want to care.
I agree, because it gives you more time with the characters.
Or it gets too jacked, yeah.
But so, obviously, you're right. You have the character setups, you have the stone being shoved, which is classic. And it was a way before, everything happens to
the
keep
case
the audience
begins
engaged.
before the murder on this one,
Right.
which is something she does in the books a lot, but doesn't always translate well to film because people like a body drop.
Exactly. And here the body count gets disgusting because they're all in the kitchen, in the freezer, with all the food. So I don't know how they were eating on that boat.
It's undignified.
Yes.
Sorry, what was your question?
I don't know how they were eating on that boat with all those bodies, with all the food in that freezer.
It was all the mixed nuts in the bar cart. That's it.
Well, so riddle me this: did you get to observe Branagh directing himself? Because he's directing, sure. He's acting. Tell us how that worked for a second.
He has a couple things he does that are really smart and really effective. He has a number of people he's worked with in the theater for a long time. Rob Ashford, a wonderful theater director, and Jimmy, whose last name escapes me. Jimmy will have to forgive me. And I know if I ever work with Ken again, he'll be there because he's on all of Ken's productions as actor and as sort of a director's left arm. Ken will bring people who has directed him in past to observe and to be there. And he's open to it. No, and just the same, he was incredibly gracious. I really went to director school on Nile specifically because I asked him early on, how far can I stick my nose in on this one to gauge your process? Because his process is so consummate. And he said, all the way, I'll kick you out when you're in the way. And he never did. And so, he would take notes from me as well. But really, he has his directors who are there. And, he knows what he's doing. He looks at the monitor, but he also wants someone to offer him something so he can just go, hey, okay, good. Thank you. Let's try that one.
Would he need to absolutely watch playback of every scene just to see what he did? Or were there ever times?
Playback is there and he will look at it. This is a way of, I should make sure I say it correctly. It means that there's enough confidence to make sure that someone's there to make sure he doesn't miss anything. Overconfidence, as we all know, can come from lack of being self-assured. So he has the thoughtfulness and the confidence to make sure someone's there to offer different instincts. And then they can look at it and then, but he also has the absolute presence of mind to know we've got it, we don't got it.
I think that's important to have. So, I mean, it's just, his performances are so great. And look, going all the way back to Henry V, the guy knows how to direct himself without a doubt. Yeah. So it's just always awesome to hear about his process.
Important to his process is it's not directing himself in a vacuum. And I think that there's a humility to that. And there's an actor in that. So he can trust himself to let go of being a director for just those moments and know that there's someone to cover it. And he can look at the monitor himself. He can go to playback and just see it, but it's not the same.
Right. I want to talk about, again, getting to the denouement, because you were talking about it earlier, that there's this setup that has to happen and people have to sit through it. But it becomes really fun when, even in the books, you're flashing back to earlier moments that seem mundane at the time, but are now important. And you have, in both of these movies, there's a lot of flashbacks. There's a lot of talking and moments that are hidden flashbacks. Some of it is obviously solved in editorial and they knew the extra footage to get, but some of it you really got to write in the script and seeing things from a different perspective in earlier scenes that we'd seen. How complicated was it to really track all that? Because there's a lot going on here that you have to come back to in flashbacks.
It's a good question. It is mostly scripted because all those things are special shots. Sometimes we'll overshoot them, but and have a few we don't end up needing.
Right.
But it is certainly a pass in the script. Look, every script has its own exigencies. This one is one of the many. I mean, look, you do character passes for 12 discrete characters and make sure each one is specific, unique, and leavened and has their moments and all that. And in this one, you spend a good amount of time building a really tightly wound clock, and you have to pay attention to that. It's the biggest challenge of it for me, to whom these type of stories does not come naturally. Christie's genius was she had the brain and the experience to jot some notes down in her notebooks, which are all published and fun to look at. And she knew when she had it and go, okay, now and knew when to layer them in. I don't have her gifts. You have to make sure they're in the right spot. I love the delight of the inconsequential thing that ends up being load bearing. I just enjoy that when I see other people do it well. So, but you don't want to overburden it. You don't want to you can't go to the callback store and treat it like Costco. Right. You got it. It's a certain judicious number.
Do you want to put on the page? Would you sometimes use a dual dialogue structure to show
No,
hear
yeah,
what he's saying and then show it?
cut. You do insert cut, colon, and then close on,
Okay.
or whether it's someone's action. But this time we pay attention to their hand, and we know it's going to be stylized a little differently. In Orient Express, there was definitely some experimentation with what will it be. Do you do just the classic '70s movie if it's black and white, or it's
Right.
really degraded feel? Like, how do we make it feel? The canted angles.
But on the page, were they kind of going on the same time, especially on the denouement when you're seeing images? So it's like when
They're all
he's
scripted
mentioning
in.
something, were you writing it concurrently next to it on the page?
It's as if it was an action line.
Okay.
From Poirot's, you go from an insert cut and then back to Poirot's face, and
Got it.
you slug it in. It's always speculative. You have to deliver as a screenwriter a version that works, so when someone reads it, they understand it. And then the director may elide or shoot additional. Elide some, shoot additional, and then editorial, it's going to be rewritten to a degree. But it is nice. It's very rewarding when editorial ends up matching the plan. You're like, okay, good. You hit a certain percentage of it, but we also go through it. The first draft of that stuff goes through conversation, and it gets better because you end up cutting to, you're the tailor with the suit. You have to make it fit the way they see this. If they have an idea for a camera move, you don't want to bust that up with the expositional piece there,
Right.
And also, he's designing transitions, and you've got your cinematographers bringing in ideas, so it becomes as part of the fluidity of it.
Lots of great
but it is the writer's job to go, but you do need this one versus, oh, you don't need that one. I was just looking for a breakup because it was a speech.
We talked earlier about Book and having a sounding board, and here he's a suspect, and here he dies. And it was a really interesting symmetry when you look at these two films together. At what point did you kind of see that going back and forth? Because it's an interesting kind of connection thread, and it was sad to see him go, without a doubt.
It had to be sad to see him go. That was why to do it, because I love him, and because everyone loves him. Apparently, my niece cried because he's his
yeah.
I'm like, good, then we did something right. That came from a very early conversation. So when we were still working on Orient Express, but Nile was a concept. The next one was concept, and I knew it wanted to be Nile even before it was official, because I just felt like it would be the right themes, the things we were talking about before. Can't remember exactly when this was. I should check the notes. But Ken and I were talking, and I was telling him about some of the things I wanted to do. That I really wanted to start with the World War II thing and see, him with a captain and someone who impressed him, and what he lost. That there was someone who he lost, and that was part of how he came to be, and all that. And I was starting to build, I knew I wanted that it was going to have a different structure, it meant a different body count, that there was going to be a nesting doll of a case within a case kind of thing. I hadn't evolved it completely yet, but Ken said, do you think there's room for Tom to come back? Tom Bateman, who played Book, because he was so great, and because he wasn't a suspect as such in the first film, there was room for, do you think he might work? And it was just that light going off of, I knew I wanted to kill someone, and I knew it needed to be a meaningful one. I'm like, 1,000%.
Yeah.
That there's going to be a point where I knew there was going to be another death before, but that we could have a surprise third and that was going to hurt, because it was. And that then put him as a suspect. I remember talking to Tom, when he said that when he read it the first time, he was around page 90. He's like, he went, holy shit, I think I did it. And I'm like, oh, great. Even he wasn't sure. I was like, no, you're just going to suffer. And then it was going to be very, very sad, because he was trying to be good, and he did something very, love makes us.
Yeah.
He was, and I knew he would be such a great character and performer to have that to say about love. Someone who's just absolutely shouting from the rooftops, crazy. The old ancient Egyptian poetry stuff about love is madness. It's just in your bloodstream, and that would be perfect for him to have a mother going, well, then get that shit out. I don't want pot poison.
It was a great dynamic, and it goes along great with real love, which he and Rosalie had, versus the love of money, which is what's driving the murder and everything else between Simon and Jacqueline. And, the misdirection that you're doing the whole movie with, who the real culprits are, and that there's multiple culprits. I thought that was great too.
Well, that's a gift of Christie. And in a case like that, you don't want to out Christie. It's right. How you get there. And, so we had a case within a case, and brought some surprises, because again, you have a lot of people who've read it, and I don't mind that. I think it's great, because you're thinking, all right, I know I'm going to make them happy, because we're doing a lot that is Fidelidus, but I also need them to think I want them kind of going to, trying to figure out, even if you reread the book recently, where are they going? Are they changing this shit? And you want to
It was welcome. It really was. So, I commend you on that. I know we're starting to run out of time. So a few quick lightning questions. Editing is the last stage of storytelling. What was something that was cut that would surprise people? A subplot, something that you worked hard on, you didn't expect, but what was the lesson in cutting it?
I can't think of a specific thing, but it's always about pace. It's always
Okay.
how much time you spend where. There's a great little speech Poirot gave in the opening where it shows just how clever he is, and that the seeds of the genius were always there. And, but it existed for no other reason than to show off how clever I am. And it came out, and it's like, of course, get that shit out. Come on. He said it. It's great. It exists in the dailies. Does not. It's it's already a section that some people might consider an indulgence or an addition anyway. You can do anything except bore the audience. And
Sure.
You want to keep them going. You want your scenes crashing into each other, and to necessitate each other. That the scenes beget each other. So anything that seems like you're taking a breath in between in a way that doesn't either relieve tension or create anticipation is doing you a disservice in a film like this.
What was your toughest scene? What was the scene as a writer that you kept coming back to over and over? And how did you creatively rise to the challenge? What was the scene that made you sweat?
I can't say any. I mean, the denouement is just the longest scene.
Yeah.
So it takes the most going back to, but it's always it's one that I probably like you carve up for, and like, okay, am I ready for it today? No, I'm not ready for it today. I'm gonna I try to psych myself up. I'm gonna do it all in one pass, but then you end up making so many notes for what it needs that it ends up getting its own shape. I'll be honest, Death on the Nile was really fun to write. I didn't have trouble. I enjoyed it, and I want to be a proponent of writers should be approaching their writing time joyfully and being grateful they got the 5 goddamn minutes with the world leaving them alone to get the work done, because it should be, if it's not your favorite part of the day, like maybe
I think that's good advice, because obviously if you're enjoying it while you're writing it, the audience is going to enjoy it a bit more while they're seeing it. So I mean, there's a truth there.
It's fun. I mean, if you find the phone rings and you can't, when you're glad for the distraction, like what you want to do is like love it, and then just same as you want to have a life to go back to when you're done doing your writing for the day, and so you have the joy there. Like, heck, writers' lives should be as joyful as any other profession, because you get to do this, and you should. It's fun. These are little puzzles. I'm so gratified when I have a scene that I have to figure out, and I almost got it. I got it today, and and then putting in character work to boot. So I that's the other thing about this. That, all the case stuff we've been talking about is just a delivery system for character work, and these are little playlets that you get to create characters and then write scenes where they get to talk for 3 pages with a genius.
Well, I like having a box set. Is there been talk about a third?
Absolutely. We are everyone involved. I'll even say what I'm not supposed to. We know what it is.
Great.
We absolutely are dying to do it. We are all sitting there biting our nails, hoping that the reception allows it. Disney has been great. 20th has been great. I mentioned Steve Aswell before. Like, he should have his name on the credits as his producer of the film. Everyone involved. Ken wants to do it. He loves playing character. I love working with him. I love working with his whole team. It would be great. We want a box set. We want to keep going.
Great. I can't wait till it's announced, man. I absolutely love it. Is there anything else you want to tell us about that you're working on?
It feels like I said plenty.
All right. Well, look, Michael, I love your movie. I'm so glad that the series is continuing. Thank you for being so generous with your time, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, you're always very generous about my film, so thank you. It's always a pleasure talking to you. That's why you're my one podcast this year.
Awesome. I'm glad to be it. And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to screenwriter Michael Green for being so generous with his time and coming down to chat with us today about his latest film, Death on the Nile. And folks, while you're surfing around online, I hope you also check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You could read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. And if you've never read us before, I hope you check out our free issue, which is kind of amazing. Our Dune issue is our current winter issue. You can look through our table of contents to see all the great stuff inside. And look, if you want to support independent journalism, and I hope you do, I'm here to offer you a discount coupon code of SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5, and that will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory Magazine. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners at iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, which is where all these Zoom interviews go. It would mean a lot to me to have you support my passion project So thanks for considering. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2022. All rights reserved. Folks, if you want to find me on social media and say hi, I am Yo Goldsmith on Twitter and also run the Backstory_mag account on Twitter. Same stuff for Instagram, Yo Goldsmith on Instagram or Backstory_mag on Instagram. I have a Facebook fan page that I sometimes log into. You could also email me at any time using backstoryletters@gmail.com. That inbox gets a little flooded, so I do go through it. I love hearing from everybody, and I honestly love responding. So feel free to drop me a line anytime. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A. Thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.